Here we are, we're coming out of spring ball. We're that close, like 19 Saturdays if you want me to keep count until the 2024 season. You guys go to Gainesville to start. But right now, how we feeling? Where are we at?
Great spring. A lot of hard work as it relates to talent acquisition and development. Continuity with our coordinators has led to just a lot of progress to build upon some of the progress we had last year. So we feel strongly about our team. We feel strongly about our culture. We feel strongly about entering portal season and adding a couple pieces here and there. So it's the momentum within the walls of this building could not be stronger.
Now, this whole thing's interesting. The whole concept that you could add starting pieces to your team after spring practice. You could lose starting pieces after spring practice. You recruit, man. You're a relentless recruiter, like everyone's always known that about you. And then you add portaling into it as well. How up to the minute do you have to be on, above and beyond all your other responsibilities, on who's in that thing or what you're hearing and what our needs are and what our numbers are in this compartment versus that compartment? Like, you've got people in the room that specialize in that, but ultimately it's on your plate. So how much a day-to-day thing does that have to be?
Oh, that's up to the second, because you just don't know what's really going to transpire out there. And you have a good feel for your roster. But in this day and age with all the stuff that goes on, you've got to be aware and alert to it as well. But, you always have open and honest conversation, very transparent with your people. That's the most important part. And then you assess and see where do we need to go? Where do we need to be more competitive? Where do we need an impact player? Where do we need young quality depth? And from there we attack the portal in that form and fashion. But you've always, just due to the ever-changing world of college football, if you do sleep, you can hurt yourself, because you could miss out an opportunity that could be a game changer.
I had a buddy text me the other day, and he said, hey, what happens when coaches get sick? What happens when they have crises? He doesn't know to spell it crises, but when they have crises in their life. What happens when there's a situation at home? Those guys don't just get to take the day off, do they? So, not me, but we'll call him Fred. Explain to Fred what happens when you have something going on outside of work.
Fred, you're not allowed to get sick.
No.
I hate to break it to you, buddy. You're not allowed to have a crisis at home. You're not allowed to have a day off. You have a sole purpose and a mission to do everything humanly possible and completely dedicate every ounce of your soul into the program that you are in charge of. And that means every single day, every single minute, every single second. So, yeah, I've been lucky. My wife is awesome. My kids are awesome. I have family in town, and luckily I have good health. I mean, you've seen the nutritionists,
right,
and their staff here, man. They put so many vitamins in you. It'd take like the Ebola river virus to get you sick around this joint. But no, you just got to go.
Last time I was here, we're shooting in the indoor, so just over here is the weight room. It's where Aaron Feld lives. And they had you in there doing some plyometric stuff, some stretching, some band work, and I didn't see many dumbbells, I didn't see many barbells. Have we adjusted the workout at all? You already got it in today.
No, you got us on an energy systems type of day.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that we had enough weight in the weight room to be able to accommodate your lifting needs. So I think they shipped in the 200-pound dumbbells today and whatnot. But no, later today you'll see the dumbbells and the barbells in effect. You'll see the MMA trainer here a little bit later as well, who should be fighting for a championship here in Japan in a couple months. You'll see us back to normal.
You know what's amazing? Anyone who follows recruiting knows you guys have brought in some pretty big names, and then anyone who watched you last year knows a lot of those young guys popped. You get to be around them a lot day to day. Folks at home just see them on Saturdays. You can be as specific as you want to be. Like, how just raw, physically impressive were some of those guys before they were even handed off to you? And then what have you guys been able to do with them here?
Yeah, it's we've been very blessed to have some really dedicated, committed signees, guys that truly are about just being the best they can be, that want to have an impact on others, and that act it out. Culture's not the slogan, or it's not the tweet, man. It's about action, and they are about action. That's the best part about these guys. And they have personality. They're fun to be around. They're competitive. They go at each other. They jaw at each other. They make practice a lot of fun, is what they do. And for us, we've had a staff that's had, over the years, some pretty good continuity. And so it's a little bit of deja vu for us in terms of, okay, you're now entering your third year, and you've got a lot of pieces that are coming into play in terms of development, in terms of talent. So people know each other. The relationships are stronger, and they're getting better. There's growth, there's development. So they make every day a lot of fun. They make it really, really exciting. And you know what? We already pour our hearts and souls into this, but it makes you want to pour that much more, because they want to do great. They want to win. They want to do great things.
You played here when Miami was at its apex. You could call Miami like an apex predator of the sport. You've then been elsewhere, and you've watched Miami fluctuate a little bit. You've now come here. You're the head coach. You're a few years in now. It doesn't take long for a generation to happen.
Right.
Maybe a 10-year period, let's say. And so when you get a couple of generations removed from like that brand being known as elite, you still remember it. I still remember it. You played. You actually lived it. But a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, you got to actually tell them. You got to actually point to the banners on the wall. You got to actually pop on the footage, and you got to watch the confetti rain down the trophy case. Hey, this happened here one time. Before you ever start, selling guys on this being the place for you, do you ever have to sort of educate on this is what it can be? This is what it was before. I don't care what it's been in your lifetime. This is what it was before. Is that ever kind of an educational opportunity you have to afford kids when you recruit them?
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of them do know, and they've seen enough video, and they've seen enough of the highlight tapes and whatnot. And, for me, it was real simple. It was like, I know what Miami is and should be. I was a very fortunate young man to be a part of it. And so, when you're at a distance and fortunate to have success at other places, it hurts you. It does. We're finally like, enough is enough. We're only on this earth one time, and just could not go to the grave without getting back to Miami and being a part of making Miami what it should always be. And that's what we've been working on relentlessly. And also knowing that there's work to do. Miami didn't slip overnight, and that you're going to have to invest an extraordinary amount of time and resources into getting it right. And now we feel we're getting very close. So the best thing for these guys is when we have practices is watching our alumni interact with them. Sometimes during practice, we have to pull them off the field as they're trying to jump out there and coach. But I think a great example was Michael Irvin at our alumni reunion this weekend, when the gist of the message was about the work, how much harder practice was than game day, and that's what gave Miami that competitive edge. But he also went to the extent of saying, hey, look, if you're not about winning, you can't be my friend. If you're not willing to hold yourself and others accountable, you really can't be a part of it. So I think it's, with all the noise that goes on in the world of sports, I think it's important for them to hear a guy like that say, hey, are you going to listen to us as former players and Hall of Famers, or are you going to listen to the noise? And the answer to that is pretty simple.
So you said you feel like you're getting a lot closer to where you want to be. Outside world sees 5 wins the first year, 7 wins the second year, and that's really all they have to go on. So aside from the record getting better, open up the hood for the program. What's different now, and how different is it than a year ago, and how different could it be a year from now?
Sure. The natural progression of a program, when you increase the caliber of talent coming in the building, when you go to a strength and conditioning program and a practice regimen that's extremely developmental, one that was used here, that was used when I was an assistant coach at the University of Alabama, that we took out to the University of Oregon and used there as well. I know a lot of other programs have used that blueprint and have had great success, and it's been implemented here. And the development of the players, along with some staff continuity regarding systems or whatnot, just leads to consistent progress. And there's so many areas that we progressed at last year to become a competitive team. End result of every game wasn't exactly what we wanted, but some there were. We won some battles that maybe Miami was not expected to come out on top of, and it was just all progress and inching more closer to what we want to be. Now that being said, everyone recognizes the amount of work that has to be done going forward. So another year, another off season, another spring, a great class, some great portal additions, and then culture. Just Not talking about it, just working, man. Just going to work, just shutting up, cutting out the outside noise, and going to work on what we know works for Miami, and worried about nothing else.
I don't ever question you guys are serious about culture here. I mean, I walk through the building, so I see it and I feel it pretty quickly. Well, when you're trying to recruit a guy, you've got a long runway to figure out whether he's about this or whether he's not. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to get a guy out of a portal, sometimes it's 24, 48, 72 hours. How do you figure out whether they're a good fit or not?
You've got to have someone or a group of people that know that particular young man. You've got to have a reference that you trust, right? Because just like anything else, an addition that hurts and chips away at culture could be absolutely devastating during a rough patch. And one that actually enhances it, and one that that you can trust amongst your players. And now we feel very trusting in terms of that if there's something that's a little bit off, that our players could bring it to cultural standards. But that being said, I never want to burden them with having to be the ones to do that. It's our job to make sure that we vet everything. So we bring something to sit beside them in the locker, to practice with them on the field, to go into games on Saturday, that they can trust themselves.
What's something, since you've been the head coach here, not at the core, like the core philosophy never changes, but what's something maybe just on the periphery of that you remember looking at, taking a long, hard think on it and saying, maybe we should tweak this, or maybe 20% change over here could do good. It could be something about you personally or about the program as a whole. Is there anything that you remember looking at and saying, yeah, we need to modify that a little bit?
You mean upon arrival or over the...
Since arrival here to present day.
Gotcha. Well, I think we're always assessing every part of it, how we do everything, whether it be our off-season program, our regimentation, how we call plays, what we call our self-scout. You know, what are we? What do we look like on tape? What are our tells? What are our opponents doing to attack us? And why are we doing well in this and not so well in that? So we take a deep dive into that, and certainly study the teams that have done the best both in college and in the NFL, to make sure that we just find an edge somewhere, somehow. In terms of the DNA of our program, we always want to enhance that. The best way to do that, in our opinion, is to get to know your people really, really well. And so we do. We take a deep dive into our people and do our best to always increase the strength of the connection, you know, the strength of affiliation, of care factor within the program. And what we have found out is that the more time you spend around people, right, the more people realize the importance of time, and there's nothing more important you can give someone than your time. So we feel like this group has become really tight, with a chip on their shoulder, with a lot to prove, and I think the staff feels that same way. So this offseason has been really, really good, really strong. We haven't played a game yet, so we don't get ahead of ourselves and get into over pushing and over hyping certain aspects. We're really, really excited.
I've always said, if you could take a person off the street and put them in an off-season lifting program, go through spring ball, go through summer conditioning, even if they didn't have the God-given ability, if they could just exist in that environment, all of them would feel like $1 million, and all of them, if they had any kind of mental toughness about themselves, they'd be ready to go conquer nations come fall. Then if they're trailing 17-6 at halftime of week 1 in the locker room, they'd be devastated and they'd be shell-shocked. How do you make sure guys mentally are programmed to where you challenge them enough in this setting here to where when it actually doesn't fully go your way in the fall, you're not rattled? Like, guys keep their composure, and you're getting the same kind of efficiency out of them.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because you can talk it all you want. You could show all the highlight films and all the teaching tapes about, this is, let's talk about situational football, and if this happens, that's fine. And you know what? And I love our strength and conditioning program. I'd put it up against any program in the country. But the weight doesn't push back. The intervals, they don't push back. Out there, it's human resistance, right? So the only way we know how, and we've ever known as players, and in fact today, Coach Dave Wannstedt, our defense coordinator back in the day here at Miami, he came by this morning, and we were talking about that. It's with all the things and all the, the books and the templates and all the teachings and sayings, the one thing that always stood the test of time was the way that you practice. And And I think the value and I would say the caliber of a good football coach by position, coordinator, or head coach is by his ability to construct and organize a great football practice, because that's the only way to get true testing as it relates to human resistance, right? To something fighting back, pushing back, creating the type of physical, mental adversity that's going to show up. You can't simulate, 80, 90,000 people, throwing all kinds of stuff at you and yelling at you, but you can simulate that gut-wrenching, relentless pounding of a tempo offense, or you can replicate, that 4th and 1 situation when a guy is dead tired after going a 14-play drive. You got to do it out there. So it's on us to duplicate those scenarios and situations as much as possible.
What's wild is if you're in a competitive setting in the business world and someone embarrasses you, someone runs circles around you, you can go hide in your office, you can sit in the parking lot, you can take a sick day the next day. A DB gets beat and looks foolish and has to be there again 18 seconds later. And to me, like, I'm now talking personally, a DB's ability to have a short memory and to be 100% and fully engaged mentally the following play. Like, I don't know if that's something many freshmen walk in the door with, and sometimes maybe guys never have it, but the ones, and you've actually played on teams with some of the great ones, the ability to have a short memory, that position or any position, it's fascinating to me when guys possess that.
Yeah, they just don't care about that last play. They just don't care. They're just focused on kicking somebody's you-know-what. And those guys, man, as many of those guys as you can have on your roster, the better you'll be off, because all they care about is that next play and whooping somebody's butt, And that is, we seek that mentality. When we have unofficial visitors, we like getting them here around practice and watching like a real deal, up close and personal, like get after it practice, because it attracts you, or it makes you maybe go somewhere else because it's not your cup of tea. So these games are going to be settled right up front on the perimeter, but it's going to be settled in some type of legitimate competitive battle that's going to, the game's going to teeter on, and you've got to have guys that truly can just focus on that one particular moment to have them have their best chance of success.
How common is it to have a guy you're recruiting check all the physical boxes, looks amazing, you wouldn't change a thing about him if you could, but when you start that evaluation of the neck up, he doesn't have it, and you're so mad because you wish you could take a 2-star or 2-star head and put it on top of that 5-star body? How often does that happen? How frustrating is it when a guy doesn't have that most important piece of the puzzle, and you can't really, there's not much you can do. You can develop the other stuff in the weight room, maybe. There's no shortcut to developing that.
Yeah, evaluation, identification really override recruiting, right? I mean, you've got to really identify the right ones before you get into the part where you really, want to attract this person to come to university. But they've got to be attracted for the right reasons. So you really got to find that out. And the only way to find that out is to go watch practice. Hopefully watch a game where they're ahead by a few or behind by a few and watch that reaction. But how frustrating is that? Man, it's... But at the same time, you know what? Part of recruiting is as important to eliminate prospects as it is to fill that board up with the ones you're going after.
Last year, turnovers were an issue at critical times in big games. So there's like a 50,000-foot question of how do you fix turnovers? And I could ask you that, and you've probably given that answer a million times. I'd prefer to ask you about the change at quarterback, where you brought Cam Ward in here, and that looked like a little dicey. Is it going to be NFL? Is it going to be Miami? So as much as you can, walk me through that process, and then what did you get from him so far in spring?
That was a very interesting and new recruiting experience process. It was no longer competing against other schools; it was competing against the NFL. So, I tell you, we loved our young quarterback room. We love the addition of Reese as well. Reese is a great player coming over from Albany, and he was on his way down. And Cam, he had chosen to go to the NFL. So, but we stayed on. We stayed on relatively consistently and trying to figure some things out, and it was I don't remember exactly. It was 6:42 p.m. You know.
I don't remember exactly the second, but the minute was 6:42.
But I see a FaceTime coming in. I'm like, man, what does this guy want? You know, better not to be to rub it in about his NFL workouts and whatnot. And get on the FaceTime, big old smile, and he says, I don't want to be a Miami Hurricane. And it's like, we're announcing this like now, all right? This is going to be point of no return, but there was a connection there from the beginning. I think everyone felt it was right. It was a matter of, is this going to happen now? Is it going to happen later? Because it feels right, and it ended up happening, and what we've got ourselves a tremendous blessing, first and foremost as a human being and as a relentless competitor, because he's an alpha, okay? And an alpha at quarterback is a game changer. If you watch the film, you'll see all the great things he does. I've spoken just volumes in terms of his ability to make things happen, extend plays, explosive plays, see the field, make great decisions, all that stuff. And we can go on and on about the tangibles, all the intangible stuff. His ability to just lead, to be a true field general, to play with just practice, I should say. We haven't had a game with him yet, but to practice with that type of just, to have those kind of guts and confidence and demand that of his teammates, and teammates demand that of him without any sensitivity getting in the way and not allowing anything to get in the way except performance. He's got all of us really, really fired up.
I think it was interesting. I was down here a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, and watched practice. You guys are in the middle of spring ball at that point, and he's out there, and he stands out. I mean, it's pretty apparent pretty quickly. And we went off to the side. We watched some cut-ups from all 22 of him, and you didn't have to say a word. All you did was he'd make a throw, he'd fit a window, and you just kind of look at me, nod your head, next, nod your head. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, although football doesn't work this way, if I were to have inserted that ability on last year's team, I don't know how different the wins and losses look, but he's going to be, God willing, injury notwithstanding on this year's team, he's going to be involved in inevitably some one-possession games either way. And 7-5 versus 10-3, in terms of a coach's reputation, there's a gulf between it. But really, it's just a bounce here, or a drop ball there, or a turnover here. And I don't know how close you feel like you guys were last year. Do you feel like you were better than your record said you were, or worse than your record said you were? But the margins of this game, being as small as they are, what does a presence like that, along with the rest of the roster elevating, mean in terms of potential? Because that's all it is in spring, potential.
Yeah, it's a massive addition. I mean, let's call it what it is. I wish you could see this part is after practice, how he rounds up the receivers and go right to the film, go right to it and talk through it, or stay out here with them, or they grab him and they're talking about this particular concept against this coverage. What am I seeing? What am I expecting from you? Well, I saw this, you saw that. Well, this is how we're going to do it. Just very directive-oriented, very just alpha in terms of that. And then go back to this last week, and he's got all the linemen just eating every ounce of food in the city of Miami at his house. You know, like he gets it, and it's just been a very strong, welcoming presence for our team, and it's backed up by his performances in practice.
You guys, obviously, you had a lot of young guys here last year that you had to rely on. I assume you probably will play a lot of young guys again this year.
Absolutely.
What, if anything, I'm not asking you, do you sacrifice your standard? You never do that. But are there some things fundamentally that you change when you know we're going to have a lot of guys on the field that haven't been here 4 or 5 years? Right. It may be that we load them up with less, or it may be that we call a certain thing a different way. What, from a coach's perspective, changes when you know average age on this team is far younger than some years I've been a coach?
Sure. No, you said it perfectly, and I think every single person that coaches here has to think players over plays. It's the bottom line. We have some great stuff drawn up, but if we're not ready to run it, there's no point in running it. We have to design and call it, and I think our coordinators have done a really good job with that and evolving more. I mean, I love what we did in the spring, and they really tailored things to bring along the guys so they could learn the system, find out what they can do well, and then really push the envelope the last 2 weeks to see what is the capacity, because that capacity week to week during the season is really tested, right? You go from, not that we play many wing T teams nowadays, but you'll go from a power spread to a pro style offense to a tempo offense. You'll see a lot of different stuff. And if a guy shows capacity, along with the ability to make plays within the system, now coordinators have a little bit more flexibility, but if not, players overplays.
A whole lot's changing about the sport. I think, you were at Alabama under Nick Saban. So Nick Saban retires. And that impacts Alabama, impacts the SEC, but it impacts all of college football. It's just a massive ripple effect. Do you remember where you were, by the way? When you heard the news that he was retiring, you remember where you were?
I don't, man.
Or what your reaction was?
I know I was working, so it's, in a sense, knowing coach and happy for him. And at the same time, it's like, man, wow, no one ever thought that day would really, really come. Everyone knows it's coming for everybody, but that would really, really come. But I mean, what can you say about the guy? The guy's done more for college football than maybe anybody in its history. So, but happy for him, because he's got he's got a great family. He's got his grandkids. He's got his 19,000 Mercedes dealership. He should probably give a Mercedes to every assistant coach to help him recruit great players. Put that on there. But no, he certainly had such an impact on everyone that has either played for him or coached for him, that nothing but happy for him.
I was so going up there, it was always interesting. You would go behind the scenes and you would see just the army of people who worked there. Most of the names you would not have known unless you went inside the building. So then some of those guys move on. They get head jobs here, head jobs there. You were talking earlier, for example, about strength and conditioning. There may be a lot of elements that I noticed there that once upon a time I would have seen in Tuscaloosa. Can you remember maybe some of the other things you would have picked up there, or some of the other things you just observed at other places along the way that sort of went into building the Lego house that ended up being what Miami is right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in all those places, the guys that I had the blessing to work for that were really, really good always shared the mentality as it relates to complacency. They just refused to allow complacency to seep into the building as it relates to anything. And I thought great examples were made by guys like Coach Saban, saying like, if you're pushing a player to do all this extra work, to work on this part of his game, well, I'm going to push you as an assistant coach to improve your teaching progressions, to improve the way that you present your indie drills and make them more relatable to game day actual play, and name it, from the way a guy recruits, a presentation, the way he's on the road, the way he presents himself, grooming a guy to be a coordinator. Him and some of these other guys, they made it a staple to challenge everyone in the building, including oneself. Without that, there's no growth. So I think getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and then regimentation, like the actual calendar, like from, Coach Feld, from the rep count as it relates to the splits jerk or the clean, in combination with the heavy squat day, whatever the synchronization of the programs are, and the rep count and the build up to be able to be effective, and the different position specific exercises and development. I thought all that stuff was fascinating. The bricks, the sticks, all the other, I don't care about that stuff. To me, it was all the level of professionalism and the people that could teach guys to improve and reach their goals.
So you guys are really, really bunkered in football 24/7, 365, which I appreciate because that's all I talk about all year. So it really works out for me. What kind of level of awareness do you feel like you have on things going on outside the football world?
Oh,
I don't care what it is, world issues, political, whatever. Like how out to left field do you feel like you are on just stuff that other people are consumed with? Because I get lost, I don't know what's happening, and I don't have a fraction on my plate that you have on your plate.
Yeah, I mean, I get a briefing, at the wee hours when I get home, and the wife says, "Do you realize blank?" I'm like, "No, thank you for letting me know," or I get a text from, a college teammate, or a former coach, from a famous wrestler passing away, to an event from a family member or a teammate, or something happened on in the community. It's just the job has changed.
Yeah.
it just consumes. If you want to do it right, if you want to do right by the players, if you want to give your assistant coaches a chance to maximize their abilities as a head coach, and that's my belief. I'm not saying it's the right way, but you need to completely entrench yourself and to use every minute you can to make things better for all those around you.
You got both coordinators here again this year, and this time last year, you could not have been more effusive in your praise of those guys, both Louisiana guys that you brought in, and they talk like it, and they feel like it when you're around them, and now they're down in South Florida, but year two, tangibly on the field. What's the difference? How big's the impact there?
Well, you know, they both, I think respectively, we jumped anywhere between 60 and 80 spots, you know, total offense and defense. And in just about every area, massive improvement. And the areas that Sony worked, third down and red zone, can really put us over the top systematically and as an organization. Them having an entire offseason and a spring, a chance to self-assess, for us to get together and really just cross-examine. Very few things are as important as whether it be system or people continuity. If you could have both, great. If you could have one, it's still ultra valuable. This year we got both of those things. It's awesome. Those guys are elite human beings, elite coaches. I love what they've done in the spring to continue to help us to evolve and to be more connected to our players as well. So looking forward to a great year from both those guys.
Who, pound for pound, who's the funniest guy on that staff right now?
I don't know if anybody's funny, you know. I mean,
wow.
Man, you know, it doesn't strike me. They all got a lot of energy. They all work their tails off. Probably some of the GAs, some of the analysts, they probably have a little bit more personality. Man, funny. I don't know. I can't say I've heard a good joke from them in a long time, but they bring great energy. So they're awesome people.
That makes up for it.
Yeah, you know, no one strikes me as a Rodney Dangerfield type in there.
So when you come out of spring ball, aside from the usual things that are non-negotiables every year, if I were in your office and there was a grease board and 2 or 3 big bullet points for 2024 were on it, what are those things that you think will make the difference with this team this fall?
Just 2.
You can go 3 if you want. You know what? We got unlimited film. It's a digital world now. You go all day if you want to.
Man. We've got, I could show you the grease board later. I could show you the bullet points that we took. You know, we had some things that had to become second nature for us in spring football, you know. And as it relates to football itself, securing the football, you mentioned earlier from a turnover standpoint, we didn't secure the football well enough and we didn't create enough turnovers. So the ball itself, ball disruption and ball security, we're at a premium. The second part is the way we played the game was inconsistent, you know, and this has to be a team that all the time plays to its absolute max capabilities from an effort standpoint. A team that has talent, but that doesn't have that consistently is going to show up inconsistently on Saturdays. But a team that has talent that can play that hard is really hard to beat. And we want to become that team by practicing it, by upping our strength conditioning program and everything else that goes with that. And then, of course, the culture. I mean, Michael Irvin said it best the other day when he said, if you're not about winning, you know, you can't be my friend. You know, I mean, he took it to the extreme. But we all knew what he said. You know, he wanted to make it clear to everybody here that when you wear that U on your helmet, when you wear it on your shirt, it's a way of life. It's how you do anything. It's how you do everything. You want to make it clear that accountability has to be about action. And a player-led team can take an organization program to new heights.
Let's go get some Cuban food for lunch. Mario Cristobal, we appreciate it, man.
You got it.